What I believe needs to happen is men need to develop training and programs of how they become emotionally safe with themselves.
I was like sending my wife all kind of loving texts after that. I said, oh man, I said, but this book just on a visceral level just wants me to, just forces me to ask, do you feel it? Are you, I love you, right?
Yeah, no, that's good. The world is suffering when we don't get to experience the heart of our men.
Welcome to Beni Adam. Come on in. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to Tell Me a Story. And before telling you what Tell Me a Story is, I want to give you a sense of the genesis of this idea. I would often sit down at the dinner table and my children would say, Dad, tell us a story. Now, sometimes I would tell them and sometimes I wouldn't tell them. But I started thinking about the centrality of stories to our experience. There's no perhaps greater evidence of the centrality of stories to our experience than the fact that the Quran is called Ahsan al-Qasas, the best of stories. So this is Tell Me a Story. It's a platform upon which we intend to elevate and highlight Muslim difference makers, and just help people connect with each other through stories. We want this to be a platform of connection, relatability, relevance, and a bit of intellectual intrigue. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today, my guest is a prolific author. She's authored over 50 books, including short stories, novels. She writes on self-help. She has been an educational consultant for Macmillan Education. She lived in Egypt and Saudi Arabia, where she studied Arabic, Quran, tafsir for over 15 years. And currently, she teaches at the Zakiyyah or UZ Heart and Soul Care Community, where she offers a class called Feminine Soul Reset. She is Zakiyyah. She is my guest today. We are honored to have her at Beni Adam at the space. When my wife is telling me something she's frustrated about, I have to not see that as I'm working out here trying to provide this living, trying to put a roof over the top and keep the phone ringing, and you talking about you tired? You tired?
Wow.
I've been to 7 cities in the last 2 days.
Wow.
But strong enough to just be able just to, like you said, catch her because she's tired.
Yeah.
But that takes some practice.
It does. And that's why I emphasize when you going back to the question about emotional safety of men, what I believe needs to happen is men need to develop training and programs of how they become emotionally safe with themselves. Because so much trauma has happened with men that they don't feel safe letting go. And a lot of it's just a survival mechanism, especially if you look at Black men. You don't want to be walking around vulnerable, you know what I mean? But if you're not able to be vulnerable with yourself.
I don't even like the word.
Okay.
No, I'm just it's just vulnerable. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, no problem. You don't have to have the word vulnerable.
No.
But I'm serious.
Let's keep it.
Okay.
We need it.
But then you can't be vulnerable with anyone else, and that's why, for example, whenever that's why the performing, I love what you said because it's a segue to this. That's why performing masculinity and performing femininity, it absolutely is just self-destructive. Because if you're out here stressed, doing all that, and you just want her to recognize that she's at home stressed, doing all her own performing femininity, and when there's a problem, all y'all can do is argue and fight. Because look at what I sacrificed. I gave birth. You out here, I gave birth to 7 kids in 2 days. That's what I did. That's what I did.
Sure. Try that, right?
Yeah, try that. You be like, is that real? Don't be questioning me. Yeah, but so y'all just fighting because you're both performing, and we all get into performance at mindsets, but we don't want to live that way. Because if you're hurting, I should be able to receive you. And this is one of the chapters I was talking about, how independent women are often the most feminine. Why? Because they have the access to their emotional resources more, and they have a whole life separate from him. So if he's upset, she has the resources to say, I think he needs a moment. Like, he may be upset, but when your whole life depends on this man, and you sacrifice everything for him, if he gets upset with you, he wrongs you for any, I mean, and we're not talking about abuse, you're just talking about moments, because we all wrong each other here and there. You don't have the ability to do what the Prophet ﷺ said. It's like, here's, my hand in your hand, and I will not sleep until you're pleased. And what I explained to the sisters is that when you take care of your own emotional resources and you do the things you love, you do the hobbies that you love, you have the emotional resources at the end of the day to be present enough to understand when he needs a moment, even just to be wrong. And if you don't do that and take care of yourself, then you will consistently feel victimized every time he's not perfectly showing up.
Oh, wow. I want to segue a little bit. I mean, of course, this is a space that really wants to feature stories. And there's one story in your book that takes us back to your, childhood. Your name is Ruby?
Well, still is.
Your family and friends. Come on,
yeah, Ruby. Oh, we're all right. Well, I'm Ruby.
Nice to meet you, Ruby. But you were talking about an experience you had. You were 16. You were in high school. You had a skating rink.
Yes.
With a young man that you called Nathan. And you used this as a kind of a tool to talk about how you came to kind of, almost like explain yourself out of your own experience.
Yes.
Right? Can you talk a little bit about that story?
Yeah, so I went skating with my sister. I love skating, still do. Hey, Magic. Yeah, she's my sister. Anyway, so I went skating with my sister, and when I was leaving, I saw a guy from my physics class, and I was like, oh, hey, Nathan, or whatever, and he recognized me, and I felt a little flattered, like, oh, he knows my name, little 16-year-old stuff.
Sure.
But then, like, I noticed, guys, like, something a little bit off, and he was not, it was like, almost like he wasn't present, and I noticed his eyes were red, he was stumbling a bit, and I was like, oh my God, he's drunk. And so he started saying things to me that were inappropriate, and I knew, like, he wasn't completely in his right mind. But it was like, and I knew he wasn't, because he knew I was Muslim, and the way he was expressing himself, and I was just like, oh my God. So I started backing up, and I was in this locker area where you put your belongings. And the more he came toward me, the more I got scared, and the more I was trying to figure out how to get away. And he wasn't processing. He wasn't he wasn't present in his eyes. And finally, I just screamed, like, because I was so scared. I was like, get away from me, you lowlife. Like, and I didn't even know what was about to come out of my mouth.
Sure.
But it
tap into that Karen a little bit.
Yeah, I was like, but his face came to, so to speak, but in a very rageful way. And then I realized, like, oh my God, did I just say that? I thought, like, that's a terrible thing to say to somebody, right? But it was a survival mechanism. I was terrified. And so, but it gave me enough time to escape. And so I had hoped that he just forgot. I couldn't even sleep that night. I was like, oh my God, I hope he doesn't remember. But next day he was like, B-I-T-C-H. I remember that. I even though I was drunk, and he was like, I will make your life hell every day for the rest of this year. And he swore on it.
Oh.
And he did it all the way until the end of the year. And he would say, and it wasn't just like, I'm just going to be mean. It was almost like he crafted it each day. He had all kinds of slurs. Some of it was violent.
Do you think a lot of the things that women learn about femininity, they learn in childhood, even before romantic relationships?
Absolutely. And a lot of it's unintentional. Like, women are, it's not just trauma, it's how you're raised too. Like, for example, tough love parenting creates performing masculinity and performing femininity, like if it's extreme. Like, and a lot of us, but it's not to tear down tough love, because tough love is a survival mechanism. So some things that work in survival just don't work outside of survival. And so when you are taught that, like, for example, boys don't cry, sit up, don't do that, he learns, ooh, that part of me that exists, that hurts, is not okay. So that's shamed out of a boy. And the girl who wants to go, let's say, I don't know, run and play kickball, whatever. I love sports, so I don't know, whatever everybody else wanted to do. It's like, no, that's not, modest or whatever parents will do. It's like, oh, that part of me that wants to run free is not okay. And so you learn to stuff down the parts of you that exist, that are beloved to you, but that the world hates or doesn't accept. And that creates the foundation for performing.
So in this situation with Nathan, you had a bad experience. He tormented you afterward. You told teachers, administrators, and they kind of just...
Well, they saw it. I didn't have to. He did it in front of them.
Wow.
They just watched. Nobody did anything.
And you said that this was the beginning of, maybe not the beginning, because you talked about even some things in your household, but this definitely reinforced this idea that I don't matter. My feelings are not important. My safety is not important. And that was the beginning of internalizing some of those.
Yeah, because nobody intervened. And years later, I went to therapy with a Muslim. He just was like, whatever, until I got to the point where when I said to Nathan, you lowlife or whatever, get away from me, you lowlife. So it was okay for Nathan to harass me, to put me in danger. That was boring and nothing here to see. But as soon as I defend myself, and that's been the story of women for generations. If we speak up, that's when it's a problem. And I think that's what, going back to a trigger that many women have who choose the label feminism against. I don't care for labels, but for the Muslim woman choosing it, we do have to acknowledge that they're not trying to do it in a haram way. They're trying to hold on to something that makes sense to them. That's when you want to pay attention. I hear way more about feminism being horrible than the mistreatment of women being horrible in Muslim circles. And what does that say about our community? And so we learned that the problem is not what happened to you, it's that you spoke about it, that you had something to say, that you defended yourself, that you chose a path, a label, or whatever that we don't like. Now we're coming for you. Now everything you got to say matters, but to attack you. But when we were being harmed and we were quiet about it, mashallah, Allah will reward you for your patience.
Wow.
So we were talking just in the break about how for you, it wasn't so much any pressure put on you in your home to behave a certain way, perform masculinity or stuff down your emotions specifically. And you were talking about how that was something you put on yourself, like as a man or a boy. So tell a little bit more about that.
Well, I think that, growing up in a household in which my father was absent, you have this interesting phenomenon. I identify very closely with my mother and my grandmother. I mean, there are some things that I look at my mother, I look at my grandmother, and I know I got it from them. So like, anybody who knows me, they know I love clothes. I mean, we're sitting in a clothing store, right now. I love interior decorating, right? Because I would see my mother get a new apartment and going through and doing her decorating and buying vases and buying rugs, and I would tag along. I mean, right? So that was something that I kind of inherited through my proximity to my mother, my grandmother. But in some ways, I knew I must be different than them. So in some things, clearly, I take from them. But in other ways, I knew, okay, if they're emotional, I can't be. If they are comfortable expressing weakness, I can't be. Because I'm a man, they're women. I can't be like that. So it was almost the lack of a male role model that expressed that vulnerability. Because my mother and my grandmother, very comfortable with their emotions, their feelings, to some degree. On the other hand, if I had seen a man talking about his frustration or his fear or his pain, that might have been, more comfortable. That might have made me more comfortable to discuss those things. And then, even thinking about my mother, I never really heard my mother complain. And even now that I'm older, it's something that still perplexes me. I've always attributed that to her strength. I never thought about that as maybe she just never let me see those wounds, or she never let me see the pain of how things ended with my father. I mean, my father struggled for many years with addiction, and they were married. My parents were married long before I was born, and so she watched addiction kind of take her husband, under.
Wow.
And as far as I knew, she dealt with all of it with a stiff upper lip. I never saw my mother say, "Son, I'm sad," or I'm really disappointed about how things ended with your father," or no. In fact, my mother would teach me to be responsible for yourself was to be unaffected by the decisions of other people. Right? To be responsible for yourself is to be unaffected by what other people do. Right? Whatever they do, you have no responsibility, to them or over them. Just be responsible for what you do. And I was raised like that. So if I would see something even from a dear, beloved family member that would normally distress a person, I was forced to, that's him, that's not me. I'm responsible for me. If that's how he wants to live his life, that's how he want to live his life. And so my mother is a beautiful, beautiful woman.
No, I get it. And I think that when I'm listening to you, I sometimes think that the way we deal with things is our way to take on something that's a really good trait, but since we don't have the guidelines, sometimes we don't know where to kind of draw the boundary. Because that's a part of, that's one of the definitions of even of anah, like the equanimity, where you recognize there's a boundary between you and someone else. You're not totally dysregulated, taken outside of yourself because of what somebody else is going through, but there's also a level of empathy for that person and compassion, and also for yourself when you see them hurting. Because we can't be 100% unaffected, although I know that's not what your mom meant.
Welcome to Beni Adam. I'm Ubaydullah Evans. We are a luxury consignment lounge in the Pilsen section of Chicago. We opened about a year ago, and our intention behind creating this space was to bring people together, giving them an opportunity to trade things that they covet, trade things that are special to them, but also share some experience. So it's not just a retail location, it's more of a kind of a retail location and a lounge. So we're really excited about this space, and we invite everybody to, come in.
But the question that comes to my mind is that you were saying you didn't see the male example of that emotion, but knowing what you know now, because you're I don't know how old you are, but I'm
23. We have to get into that.
Well, I'm 49, y'all, so
23.
This is my little brother. But actually, he's younger than my daughter.
Yeah, 23.
So
Yeah, I did. Yes, I have a daughter that's about to be 19, but it's one of those biological inexplicables.
You got married at 2. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But now when you look around, do you feel a sense of gratitude that you didn't have that example, that you were able to kind of just study Islam? And the reason I'm asking that, and this is just my own little selfish brain, is that a lot of people, in my opinion, because I've spoken to many different men who are in positions of leadership, and they don't listen as much in these kind of conversations as you do. And I'm wondering, Allahumma barik, if it's because you didn't have something as a roadblock, because some people's fathers and examples have modeled for them what you shouldn't be. And I imagine in my head, and I'll just listen to your point of view, that sometimes a bad example is worse than no example at all.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that because the closest thing I had to a father figure growing up was Bill Cosby.
Oh,
that's a whole nother thing. You know what I'm saying? And I had, I had a lot of sports coaches. I was very into sports. I was an athlete as a youth, and those teams and the camaraderie I experienced on those teams, and those men sculpting me, molding me. No, but it is important to, and this is something I think a lot of, we love sports. I love sports. But those men were sculpting me and molding me differently than I sculpt and mold my son. Because see, I love my son in the context of us we're not doing anything in particular. It's not that like I'm trying to get the best out of you for a sports team. I'm just invested in you because you belong to me. It's different than a coach where it's kind of like, yeah, there's an investment here, but I'm also interested in getting the best out of my players so that we can perform as effectively as we can. So it's a little bit different, but you still appreciate those role models, the time they take with you, but it does have that slightly utilitarian kind of aspect to it. You know, we love you, but we need you to go out there and play well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're gonna kick you off the team, but we love you.
Yeah, we love you, but we need you to go out there and play well. So yeah, I had those role models, but nothing like a father in the home to kind of set a pattern, set a precedent for like how things are done. So I come into Islam, you know, open, you know, looking for those things, actively observing the older men in my community. Okay, is that how that's done? And that's why, you know, meeting people like Professor Amir Islam, Dr. Sherman Jackson, you know, this Imam Zayd Shakir, this was huge for me. You know, they were having an impact on me that they couldn't have imagined. They probably just thought, well, we're religious teachers and he's, you know, a student. But I'm watching and saying, okay, how does Imam Zayd interact with his wife? Okay,
I like that question. You know,
maybe that's what I'm supposed to do.
I like that question because it's the fact that there's even a curiosity there, because some men come like, I already know what I'm supposed to do because I want to do it, and that's the end of it. And I'm curious with that particular observation, even having studied. By the way, let me ask you, did you have any, during your study, did you have any women teachers?
No.
How do you think like that has impacted you and the rest of the ummah, that kind of sunnah is lost?
Well, I would say yes and no. Not principal teachers, you know, workshops, weekend classes, but like teachers in like the protracted courses of study that I did. No.
Do you feel like that's a loss for the ummah, and not necessarily just for you, but one of the things that, and I don't know, and I'm still exploring it, because one of the things that has been said, and even by some of the male scholars who have studied history, is that part of the problems of what we're seeing today is that the loss of female teachers, the female scholarship, being respected in the male spaces. So there's no example in front of a man to respect the thoughts of a woman in a way that's he's held accountable for in a study.
Yeah, I think that's important. The other thing that I think is very important is to see a critical, at times, feminine voice rooted in devotion. You know, there's a sister I know, friend of our family, identifies as a feminist, stridently so. But one thing that, and I've people sometimes criticize her ideas, her thoughts, and stuff like that. But sometimes I say, you know, man, you are talking about somebody that does 2 khatams of the Quran every Ramadan, man.
Subhanallah.
Right? Just so they see, you know, yeah, we can disagree. And I might still take issue with a person's ideas. But this is a person that has iman. This isn't like a person that, like, what they're talking about, as you said, to preserve their faith. Right? They're not saying it's like, you know, I got a secret agenda to undermine Islam. No, I just disagree with them on some things, but I recognize that their context, their motivations are as devotional as anyone else's. I think it's important for brothers to see that. Because when women speak, we often think, oh, they're only saying this because they not really down. They don't really believe like we believe. What a foolish conclusion.
You know, I find that really interesting, and I have seen that kind of psychology. And I remember a brother saying, it's actually the same imam who had those other crazy ideas, but you give credit where credit is due. And he was saying how what men have lost today is the definition of abd in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like a man, when he thinks of being a man, he doesn't think about ubudiyah. Truly. Yeah. Like I am a servant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's you're not, so the humility is gone. It's like, Allah, the psychology that happens to men is that Allah gave me this assignment and I'm here not to humbly and carefully, because I can be in trouble if I do this wrong, but like now I get the whip. You know?
Yeah, I think, and here's where I think some of those larger societal and sociological dynamics, become relevant. When you're dealing with a community of men that don't have a lot of access to empowerment, I think that spaces where they can find that empowerment, we almost just, we're intoxicated with the idea that I'm in charge, I'm the leader. And that intoxication almost pushes you to a little, irresponsibility.
I agree, but I'll go back to a point that I said before. I pay attention to language. It's not there. Why don't you create it? Why are you trying to find it? And this is the main issue that I have, even in my own personal struggles and my challenges with men, which I recently said, and Allah corrected me, I guess. I don't know. We have to see what the meaning of this is, but I decided I'm not ever going to get married again. And I said the only exception is if Allah sends a sign. And some of the sisters who hurt me, they were like, well, what would be a sign? I said, for example, Isa comes back, alayhi salam, and he says, I had a revelation from Allah to tell this sister to get married to that brother. I said, okay, I submit. So, but anyway, long story short, point. And I was only halfway joking. And I said, it has to be a sign. So anyway, sister recently had a dream that I got married. And so I had to sit with this because I had to revisit a lot of the things. And it was a lot of things that happened that it seemed like it was a true dream because all these different things came together. Anyway, it's not important to talk about in the podcast. But my point is that my main reason for that was that where is this idea of taqwa amongst men? This belief in the ghaib. I'm tired of hearing, well, there's not this. We've been disempowered. I have too. I've survived all kinds of trauma. I've survived all kinds of things. And I'm not saying that my wounds are worse than your wounds. That's not, I'm not playing that kind of oppression Olympics type stuff. But what I'm saying is, where is the desire for taqwa? It's like, well, understand that this is what happened to us and we need to find spaces. Why don't you create the spaces?
No, I mean, I wish it was that easy. And wallahi,
ease does not, no.
Ease is not a precondition for doing anything that needs to be done. But I guess what I'm saying is that I think some of the, if a person, and again, like you, I'm not into labels, right? But if a person's, I guess, worthiness as a leader was something taken for granted, I think they could focus on the quality of that leadership. How benevolent is that leadership? How kind, how compassionate, how attentive.
But who takes it for granted? Who would be the one taking it for granted?
But if, for instance, that leadership, you feel like it's the credibility of you being a leader is under attack. Anybody who criticizes you, you can't, you know what you don't hear? You don't hear, look, you got this. But your having it is has to be qualified. You got this as long as you. It's kind of like when Allah says, "Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas." The Muslim community is the best community. تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. Because you enjoying what is good. By the way, I've never heard a non-Muslim English speaker use the word enjoying. That's what I mean. But
I know. That's what I think. I read some translations.
Enjoy.
Like, what is that?
Yeah, because you encourage what is good, you discourage what is bad, and you believe in God. So, no leadership is without conditions. All leadership has conditions. So if what I think men heard was, you're the leader, but you're violating some of the conditions of leadership in this fake performative masculinity and undermining the full personhood of women in, incentivizing her performance, etc. I think that is heard differently than you shouldn't even be a leader.
Woo.
You're not even worthy of being a. Now
people say that to men.
No. If you're a black man, the entire society is saying that to you.
Okay, here's the one thing I will say, and that's hard. I will acknowledge it, and I will add again. Now I'm going to go back to myself and my own journey of coming back to, because I almost left Islam. One of the things that I had to accept, and it was hard, and it still is the hardest thing today, is that you're going to be challenged and criticized and attacked more than you're supported. And that is just the standard of life. And if a man is not willing to take up that mantle, then he himself has said he's not worthy of leadership. Not anybody else. You don't get, I had to sit with myself that maybe, like even for marriage, I had thought, okay, I'm going to have this and I'm going to have that. Maybe you won't. But does that mean your whole assignment on earth is over? Does that mean that you won't have support in other ways and from other platforms and from other people? And I even said to myself, maybe no man while you're alive will support you. But if you are sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will bring the support, even if it's after your death and your books begin to be read or what you're saying. And I had to hold on to that. I had to hold on to a worldly reward, so to speak, because we focus on the hereafter, but a worldly result that I might not live to see, but that I could plant the seeds for. And that's why I'm sitting here.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I mean, a lot of, just dealing with leadership, whatever that means, I just deal with the fact that I do feel compelled to offer a certain kind of kindness and a certain kind of compassion.
No, that's what I mean. Created. That's is exactly what I'm saying. Is that created? And that was one thing I was going to say. You said it on the camera. They hear it, and they do need to hear it. It's just that the one thing I will say, and so men should be mindful, this book was mainly written for a woman audience. And I don't mind. I think men need to.
I didn't get that sense. No.
Okay.
No, I definitely. No.
Yeah, so I wasn't thinking, I didn't even know, because I have gotten so used to being criticized, attacked, torn down, told all kinds of things, that even just my very voice, men don't want to hear it. That I just decided, you know what? This is the world we live in. I don't think that's healthy and natural because Allah gave it to me. That's one thing I did not give to myself. So I'll leave it alone. But I did make dua. I did say, oh Allah, open the hearts of our men and whatever, So for me, I will say this book is not going to be that type of letter to a man. I don't mind saying it to men. I've said it to many men. But here's the challenge. This is where the worth thing comes in. I remember saying something to a brother and very encouraging, and he was like, are you mocking me? And I'm like, whoa. And it blew my mind that he felt such lack of worth inside of him that even me sincerely pointing out his good qualities and encouraging him towards whatever, he took it as mockery.
Wow. And
this is where I was like, okay, I think I'm just going to stick to the women's spaces. And if any man wants to come, I'm here. Here's my email, whatever. Because it was like, what can I say at that point?
No, I like that too. I mean, I think that, there's a place for a type of address that's kind of like generally applicable to any listener. But I think that the best speech is always directed to someone. You can't produce stuff that everybody likes, right? If if you make something and everybody likes it, it's probably banal and it's probably it's like what is everybody like? No, I'm speaking. So that's when I read this book, I told Hadia, I said she's definitely writing as an advocate for women.
Absolutely, and that's what I decided because there are a lot of women quiet quitting Islam. Where they're walking around in hijab, they're still married, they're not divorced, but they don't pray, they've given up, they're not fasting, and there's no help for them. And they've already seen, and like one sister told me, I'm scared to even look at feminism, which would be something that would hold her in her mind, because I don't want to be called names, I don't want to be and what she meant was like feminism in the framework of Islam.
Sure.
And I saw how much we are being ignored. And I saw how anytime a woman has concerns, if a man doesn't understand it, then it's useless. Like, for example, a man will say these women will come and they're trying to get divorced for no reason. They're taking a hadith. And I remember challenging a man. I said, according to you or according to Allah? Like, we're like, just because you haven't quite understood why this woman has made this decision, does that mean it's no reason? Just because she wasn't able even to articulate it in a way that you understand it. I said, on this earth, there's only one human being who needs to understand her reason, and that's her. If she understands it, her hisab, her account is with Allah.
You make a very good point of that in the book. You know, this idea of accepting that each of us are individually accountable for our actions. Even if you don't agree with the choice that I've made.
Exactly.
What can you do?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, it's like when we read ayahs like, Allahu yahkum bainahum fima kanu yakhtalifun. That God will judge them in those things in which they used to differ. It means that, look, sometimes we have differences that are insoluble.
In this
You're
world.
there in this world. You're there and I'm there. And all you can do is tolerate that difference.
That's right.
But you were saying women aren't, no. You have to submit to a man.
Yeah.
His opinion, his outlook, his perspective, even if it differs with your inmost, beliefs.
So yeah, those are a couple of things that just came to my mind. But I would just say, as a final note, what advice would you give to young boys or even young men, or the men who are twice as old as you at 23,
Right.
Who are looking for some sort of guidance on how to connect to their emotions and be an emotional leader better, and to be even a better husband? Because I do believe, in all fairness, even the men who are messing up, I do think they want to get it right.
Alhamdulillah. This is a journey. When I accepted Islam, I committed myself to, continuous growth. And I would encourage, other men to be similarly curious about, just possibility that exists within our lives and within our relationships. I certainly don't speak from a place of having arrived anywhere, especially when you're talking about like just being comfortable with one's emotion. I was just speaking to my wife about this. I really esteem the faculty of endurance. People that have great, like I'm the kind of guy in my spare time, I watch marathons on YouTube just to see people crossing the finish line. I get teary-eyed when I see a person raise their hands in triumph, so that kind of, I guess, Iron Man kind of ethic is very much a part of who I am. Where I am now, though, is recognizing that that's not the only part of who I am. Like, there's a part of me that wants to be comforted, that wants to be understood, and is trying to grow in my, comfort with just being more vulnerable. And I find that if I can accept those things in myself, it's much easier for me to accept them, in the people that I love. If I can say, well, sometimes I get scared. Then when somebody else tells me they're afraid, I can say, okay, I know what it is to be afraid. But if I'm committed to never, ever showing fear, when somebody else says, I'm afraid, man, stop being weak, man. We ain't got time for all that.
That part. This is what we need to hear men say. I'm scared. I don't have the answers. I mess up sometimes. And bring back the sunnah of crying in public. How about that? You know what I'm saying? Like, this, like, it's almost like, did y'all see it? Was that a tear, or did he have allergies? You know what I'm saying? So I think, like, creating a space, and I invite you and to create a space for men in your imperfect space. Look, maybe right even here, maybe once a month, you all have a man support group of something, because the world is suffering when we don't get to experience the heart of our men.
No, I'm listening.
Good.
I'm listening.
Good.
I encourage people to read this book. Right? I encourage people to read this book.
Yeah. Show them the book when you say it. Look.
See, you do it. You do a little.
No. I'm saying so that I was helping them with the editing.
You do a little direct. You writer, novel, short stories, self-help, teacher, film director. But do you feel safe with him? This book challenged me in many ways, but these were excellent challenges.
Yeah.
Just thinking about if I was like sending my wife all kind of loving texts after I said, oh man, I said, but this book just on a visceral level just wants me to just forces me to ask, do you feel it? Are you? I love you, right?
Yeah. No, that's good. I'm glad.
But I encourage my brothers to pick this up. I encourage my sisters to pick this up. I have 2 daughters and a son, and making sure that we cultivate and foster a culture in which everybody can be authentic and grow in their relationship with God in that way, and not performative. You've given us, yet another tool that will help us in that direction.
Alhamdulillah.
So,
well, thank
God
you.
bless you.
Yeah,
thank you for coming on. It's been wonderful to talk with you. If you want to tell me a story, you can find me at tellmeastorymedia@gmail.com. Today, I've had the honor and the privilege of conversing with Zakiyyah, prolific author, teacher. She's creating, I think, a very, very interesting lane for men and women to, I think, find deeper understandings of what it means to be emotionally safe for each other and emotionally safe for ourselves. So check this book out when you get a chance.
Thank you for having me, first of all. I really enjoyed it, and I'm humbled and honored to be a part of this conversation. And thank you for reading the book. As I told you before, the fact that you opened to the first page after you saw the cover, I was like, lots of points there. May Allah bless you. But for those of you who are wondering where you can get the book now it's available for pre-order. This is the book. It's one of my babies. Yay. Okay, and it's available on Amazon for pre-order right now and other places. And it'll be coming out August 30th, this year, 2025. And if you're interested in Feminine Soul Reset, just go to sqsoul.com and you can join there. And if you're interested in contacting me, just write me at uzi@uziauthor.com and I'll be happy to respond.